Thank you very much. Welcome to Universally Manchester. This is day 3 of 4 days of the Universally Manchester Festival. So if you didn't know why you were here, thanks for coming. But you're here to celebrate 200 years. It's our birthday, 200 years of existence of the University of Manchester, and today's talk is part of that. So thanks very much for coming along and braving the rain, if you got caught in it, and you brought the beautiful sunshine with you. So I'm Julian Skirm. I'm the university's Director of Social Responsibility, and I'm just going to be doing a quick bit of housekeeping and handing over to our exciting speaker today, Sheena Cruickshank, our esteemed Professor of Immunology in the university, who's going to do a really exciting talk on our immune system in a moment. Quick bit of housekeeping, though. As you might be aware, if you've been walking around campus, we do have some ongoing protests and activism on campus in relation to the deeply distressing events happening in Israel and Palestine. And you may know, actually, if you've been looking at the news, there are hundreds of such camps around the world at universities at the moment, and Manchester is no different. We're not anticipating any disruption today, but we have carried out a full risk assessment, and campus security and support are on hand. If there is any disruption, please be calm. We're very used to this in a university, as you might imagine, and we do have established protocols to deal with any disruption. And because of our commitment to free speech and respectful dialogue, if there is a protest, we will potentially invite the protesters to address the audience for a few minutes. Then we'd ask them respectfully if we can carry on with the event. That's what we do, just to let you know. So please just be calm. We're more used to this, but we're conscious when people come onto campus that they may not have seen that before, that protocol. So that's the housekeeping done. So without further ado, let me introduce Sheena, who is now going to talk to you about the science behind our immune system and facts, myths. She's going to do some myth busting around immunology. So we're really excited to hear Sheena. She's going to speak for around half an hour and then open it up for around 15 minutes of questions and answers. So thanks very much, Sheena. Please take the stage.
Okay, can you hear me okay? So I'm going to be talking about this idea of boosting your immune response, and whether or not this is something we should be doing, we want to do, or whether or not it's a bit of a myth. So I'm looking at the facts and the fiction. And this was really prompted by the proliferation of things around the wellness industry, whether you call it personalized nutrition, whether you call it functional medicine. So I've just taken a few little screen grabs here of just the variety of products, lifestyle hacks, wellness things that you can try, and some of the claims that they're making. So the first bit of the talk's going to be kind of just looking into these in a little bit more detail. And the first thing I want to do is just to see whether you're awake. So how much do you think that wellness industry is worth? Now, clearly it's worth something because of all those pictures I showed you. I think we can move past the first option. So who thinks it's worth $4.5 million per year? Yes? No? No? Higher? Higher? Okay. $10 million? Higher. $4.5 billion? You think that's about right? $4.5 trillion is actually the right answer. It is worth loads of money. I don't know how that got there. So, when you think of the wellness industry, is there a name that particularly pops into your head? She's quite famous. Gwyneth? So I think Gwyneth Paltrow has become one of the names. She's not the only person, but obviously she's a very well-known actress. And she runs her own brand. It's called Goop. So it's got wellness products that she sells. There's a TV program. There's even a festival devoted to Goop products. And she very much tries to kind of live by what she preaches. And so I want to have a little look at kind of in a bit more detail about the kinds of things that she does, because I think it's quite interesting. And one of the things that she did sort of about last year, I think it was, is she talked about her daily regime. And it went viral, little clips of it on TikTok, and that's what the right-hand image is of. So let's look at Gwyneth's day. So she starts the morning with coffee. I assume black because it's Gwyneth, but I might be wrong. She may have milk. She may even have sugar, but I really doubt that. Then she exercises. Then she breaks her fast with bone broth. Now, I wasn't familiar with bone broth, and I was trying to think what it was, and I kind of got these images of kind of sucking on some stock cubes. And I probably wasn't that wrong, because you essentially take a bunch of manky moans and you boil them up, and then you sieve everything, and then you're left with the liquid. So it is like sucking on a stock cube. And as you can imagine, it's not really got much in the way of calories in it. She then proceeds to do some exercise, again, probably some yoga and things now, and she finally has some calories in the evening. She swears by the paleo diet, which is quite a natural-based diet, lots of fruits, berries, nuts, a bit of protein as well. But it's not what I would say the most fun diet. And I think, really, if we wanted to live like Gwyneth, we would never have any fun at all. And it might be why she sells this product. This is a real product. I haven't made this up. I don't know, Gwyneth. Maybe you just need some cakes. She also has some other interesting lifestyle hacks that she's tried. This is one of them. Now, this might not be very familiar to you all. This is ozone therapy. Okay, so the bag has got the ozone in it, and there's a tube. Does anybody know where the tube might go? I can hear a really dirty laugh. I think somebody might have guessed. It is, in fact, rectal or vaginal ozone therapy. If this offends you, I have changed it to front and back bottom. So yes, she has tried jettisoning gas up her unmentionables. And there's a lot of claims made about ozone therapy. It's supposed to boost your immune system. It's supposed to relieve inflammation. It's supposed to relieve autoimmunity, infection, chronic pain. So it's doing a lot. But here's the thing. If you're putting gas up, so the first thing that I think is going to happen when you put gas up your unmentionables is that you're going to fart. So apart from being windy, you're also going to be poor. So it may surprise you that it can cost anything up to £1,000 to have ozone fired up your unmentionables. And as a researcher who, amongst other things, looks at the effects of pollution on our immune system and health, I was very aware of ozone because ozone is something that we find in the air that we breathe in very polluted areas. And ozone's quite damaging, particularly to our mucous membranes. And that's the lining of your nose, your throat, your upper airways, your bottom, and your vagina. So why would you be putting something in that's going to irritate those linings? It worsens and causes inflammation, so it's already known to be linked to worsening symptoms of asthma. And other side effects of the therapy include air embolisms, which are pockets and bubbles of air that get trapped in the body, and that can be fatal. You can get infections as a result of poor management when they give you the treatment. It can cause blindness, and unfortunately, it can be fatal. So it's a lot of money to spend on something that is unlikely to be beneficial and more likely to be damaging. Gwyneth also enjoys supplements. Now, there are a lot of different supplements out there. There's kind of things like taking different herbs, different roots of things, as well as all the kind of vitamins and minerals. And again, this in of itself is worth a lot of money, around $124 billion by 2028. And I think it's become quite popular because of this idea that things that are natural must be better for our bodies. But here's the thing. A drug is defined as any chemical or combination that has biological activity over and above nutrition. Herbal products typically will have nothing in the way of nutrition. but they contain chemicals, and a lot of them are not made to good standards, so they may contain quite a lot of unintended chemicals. So they could be quite toxic. So it's hard to say that if they are effective and they've got chemicals, that they're not really just drugs. And think about it, some of the drugs that we use, like aspirin, like quinine, which is used to prevent malaria, these are natural substances that are now accepted as drugs. And there's a lot of fine print as well when you look at this industry, because not all herbal medicines are regulated, because there is no requirement to register food supplements here in the UK or in many other countries. There's no national legislation that kind of sets maximum levels in supplements. And studies to show if they're scientifically effective tend to be very limited, if at all. And if you look at the fine print, and this has actually been taken from the Goop website, but you'll often see somewhere there'll be fine print that will say something like this, saying that the statements haven't been evaluated. They cannot claim to be helpful for any major conditions. Do they work? Well, for some, they certainly do. And one of the reasons for this, it may be that there's a scientific study that's not happened yet, or it may be the placebo effect. And that's the idea that if you believe something will work, it will stimulate your brain, and that in turn will stimulate the effect. So if you do want to take these things, you can try and stay as safe as possible. There is actually something called the Traditional Herbal Remedy Certification. So look for that on any products, because that at least means that it complies with safety standards in its manufacture. And it also provides information about how or when you can use it. For example, should you take it with food? But it has to be said that these will only have been assessed for minor conditions. They cannot ever make claims about their effectiveness for more serious conditions. So be aware of that. But try and stay safe if you are going to use them. But even if they did boost our immune system, is this something that we should be doing? Because our immune system is this complex network of cells and products that are working together in harmony to deal with infectious threats, yet ignore things that are beneficial. And we know that if you have an overactive immune system, it can actually be an incredibly dangerous thing. Autoimmunity is a condition that is associated with an overactive immune system reacting against you, things like rheumatoid arthritis. Allergy is another example where your immune system's reacting against harmless things, also asthma. Has anybody here got allergy? Yep, really loving my immune system right now because I sneeze with the grass. And then you've got things like cytokine storms. Now, this is something that probably a lot of you hadn't heard of until we got to the sort of peak of the early pandemic, when unfortunately cytokine storms were one of the features that were what were killing people with severe COVID. And it's where your immune system gets overactive and starts and doesn't get switched off and starts really damaging your body. So an uncontrolled, boosted immune system is a bit like a nuclear bomb going off in your body. It can be incredibly damaging. So is this something that we want to do? Well, yes and no, because if you want to specifically boost your immune response, what you do is you mimic the immune response and give it the instructions so it can mount a memory response and deal with an infectious threat. And that's what a vaccine is doing. So that's a very specific way of boosting your immune response to one thing. So let's change the question. Are our immune systems working optimally? And that's the key thing. Because modern lifestyles, the way we live today, is not good for our immune system. And we know this. We're less able to deal with infections because our immune systems aren't working very well. And the reason for this is that something in immunology called metabolic inflammation, or meta-inflammation, which has got nothing to do with Mark Zuckerberg. In fact, I would say we coined it first. And this is a low-level chronic inflammation, so it's a long-lasting inflammation. And something similar can happen as we grow older, called inflammaging. And it's worth saying that we are an aging population. By 2030, 1 in 6 people in the world will be over the age of 60. So this is something that we should be concerned about. And what's happening is the immune system is getting out of balance. So here's the most technical bit I'm going to give you. So we've got 2 main arms of the immune response. We've got quick responders, innate cells that we're born with, things like macrophages and neutrophils. These are there to rapidly respond to threats in quite a generic way, but they produce lots and lots of inflammatory mediators. And in inflammaging and meta-inflammation, you have too many of these, and they might be producing inflammatory products. Conversely, you have fewer of the other arm of the immune response, the adaptive cells. That's the T and the B cells that we've perhaps been hearing a lot more about since COVID. B cells make antibodies. These are the guys that have got memory and can effectively remember and deal with a threat. You have fewer of those in inflammaging and meta-inflammation. So you've got this out of sync immune system. So the innate cells might be chucking out inflammatory products. You've got lots fewer, that's a really bad sentence, adaptive cells. So you're less able to specifically deal with any pathogens. You're less able to mount good responses to vaccines, so you're less protected with vaccines. And what this means over time is that you're becoming more and more susceptible to threat. And if that inflammation, that low-level inflammation those innate cells are causing is left unchecked, the barriers in your body, like your guts, can become leaky. And that helps even more germs get in, including our own microbes in our microbiome. And that's very, very bad. If you can imagine, it's like it's causing lots and lots of little fires all over your body. And then your immune system, the few adaptive cells that you've got, will try and deal with them. And then a great big threat comes along, and your immune system's completely distracted with the few effective cells it's got, and it can't deal with it anymore. It's kind of like your immune system's playing whack-a-mole. Quickly, there's threat, 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 threat. So does that mean we actually do need to boost our immune system? Do we need Gwyneth's lifestyle hacks? And I don't know if you can spot this, but I very carefully worked hard in Photoshop to make an absolutely seamless picture of Gwyneth in a lab coat holding an enema kit. But to my knowledge, she doesn't actually administer any enemas, although to my knowledge, she has had them. So what do we need to do? Because we definitely don't need that. You know the answer to this, and that's going to be the really annoying thing about this talk. It's quite common sense stuff. The first thing I'm going to talk about is our diet. The modern lifestyle, the diet, is really not good for our immune system. Because if you think about 2 of the most basic things for the evolution of life, it's our ability to get nutrition from food, and it's our ability to deal with threats. So it's not surprising that our immune system relies on certain nutrients to be able to function properly. And just as a few examples, so some of the vitamins and key sort of metabolites like iron and zinc are really important for those T and B cells to function. So that's sort of things we get in some fresh fruit and vegetables. Saturated fats in delicious burgers and the like, they're really bad. They cause inflammation. Polyphenols, which you get from sort of brightly colored fruits and vegetables, they're really good at downregulating inflammation. So that's just a few examples. There's lots and lots of precise examples. And there is another reason why our food is so important for our immune system, and that is because of the microbiome. So this is a microscope image taken from my lab. What you can see is sort of blue blobs. They're nuclei, the brains of the cells, and that's the lining of the gut. And they're making green blobs, which is mucus, which is lining the gut. And then on the other side, you can see lots of red speckles. I've got a pointer, but it's actually really pointless because I'd have to run out here to show you. But all those little red bits are bacteria, and that shows you how closely our microbes are with the body's cells. So the microbes in our gut are helping educate and develop our immune system. For example, helping T-cell function, helping develop regulatory anti-inflammatory pathways. And our microbiome needs a really diverse diet. That's what it needs. It uses all the things that we eat to nurture itself. It actually also helps provide some of those essential vitamins and things that we need for our immune system to function. So it breaks down the food that we eat and creates some of the vitamins and metabolites we need. And your microbiome really enjoys fiber in particular. So just thinking about swapping out some into wholemeal food or adding some chickpeas, your microbiome will really thank you for it. And the unfortunate truth is that actually one of the biggest issues in the world and in the UK is something called malnutrition. Now, when we think of malnutrition, we do have this sort of stereotypical view that malnutrition means that we're starving. But that actually isn't quite what it means. What it means is you've got inadequate minerals or vitamins in your diet. So it doesn't matter how much you eat or how little you eat, you could still be malnourished. And so it is not about your weight either or your diet. This is not a dieting thing. It doesn't matter what shape or size you are. It's just about what you eat. Because malnutrition damages quite profoundly the immune system, making us way less able to deal with infections. And scarily, 1 in 20 people in the UK are thought to be malnourished because of their diet. And that's probably a figure that's growing because of the cost of living crisis. We know that we've got people that are skipping meals. We've got children going to school who aren't getting breakfast. And that's not on because that is not going to be good for them. So do we need a really tailored kind of food thing? And that's the idea, again, going back to this wellness industry of some of these personalized nutrition plans. And this is one, this is the Zoe app, but there are lots and lots of other ones. And their strapline is your body is unique, and so is the food that you eat or need. But how useful are these kind of apps? So like Goop, they operate as wellness companies. That means they're not regulated. And they're personalized in name only. So what they do is they rely on looking at just a few biomarkers that actually, scientifically, we don't really understand what those biomarkers do in isolation. So there's a lot of assumptions being made about what they might mean. Again, it can end up being quite costly. The Zoe app, for example, costs around £600 in the first year, and that's before you buy any of the supplements. And a recent study that came out in the last month in Science looked at this personalized nutrition industry and looked at the microbiome testing that they're doing. And they actually showed that these tests lacked a lot of validity. If you sent the same sample more than once to the same company, it would give you different results. So they weren't even being consistent within themselves. And the truth is, as somebody who's been working in the microbiome field for over 20 years now, we don't know what a good, healthy microbiome looks like. We couldn't tell you if there's one microbe that's going to be the most beneficial. And so really, the benefits of these beyond a healthy diet, and this is something that's been said by the Food Standards Agency here in the UK, are probably quite limited. What do we know? We just know that we need a varied diet. We need to be thinking about eating the rainbow because we're more likely to be eating the things that are going to nurture our immune system and nurture our microbiome, and thinking about putting some fiber into our diet. So that doesn't need to be an expensive diet. If you add things like lentils or chickpeas, these are not expensive foods because we are what we eat, essentially. So do we need any supplements? Well, possibly. Now, vitamin D is famously the sunshine vitamin, and it's not always, particularly in Manchester, the easiest to get. So usually in the summer, you're all right, and you can get it from your diet, particularly from certain sort of fatty fishes, but it's a little trickier to get. So you may want to supplement in the winter. And if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, and you don't eat all the sort of right things, it's possible that you will end up with not enough vitamin B12. You've got to really try hard to think about having vitamin B12 in your diet if you're vegetarian or vegan. So you may need to supplement with that, or else you can become anemic. Okay, so we're going to move on from diet, and we're going to talk about exercise. So we've become really sedentary, haven't we? We kind of sit at our desks 8 hours a day. We don't necessarily move much, and we get in our cars and we drive off. But I'm not talking about kind of mega exercise, you'd be pleased to know. Because actually, if you're not used to it, intense and prolonged exercise is quite damaging. And it actually decreases our ability to deal with new threats. It decreases our antibody responses, it increases stress hormones, and it's something like 3 to 4 times more likely to develop colds and upper respiratory tract if you suddenly start going mega exercise. So what I'm talking about is moderate activity, which is something we can all do, I think. So this is my family on a walk. I think my eldest son's getting a bit into it there. I think he was thinking about ice cream at the end. But it's been shown that regular moderate activity, so gardening, cleaning the house, dare I say it, taking the stairs, having a nice brisk walk is really good for helping our immune system function. You're half as likely to get a nasty cold. It mobilizes our white blood cells, and it mobilizes our antibody responses. And what I mean is your heart's getting a bit faster, and you can still talk, but you can't sing, and you feel a little bit warmer. That's kind of what they say. So it's not anything super, super intense. I haven't tested the singing and talking thing, so feel free to try it out later. And interestingly, it would have other benefits, because it's been shown that actually being outside more is better for our well-being, and it helps boost the economy. So actually, it could be doing all sorts of other things just that are really good for you, and I'll talk about those a little bit more later. Now, the other thing we know is that we live high-stress lifestyles typically these days. And you'll know it yourself. If you've had a super stressful period, you nearly always get rotten and ill at the end of it, don't you? And it's like, oh, great. That's the reward. And that is because stress, long-term chronic stress, is really bad for us. It decreases the ability of the immune system to function properly. It increases stress hormones like cortisol that cause inflammation. Whereas acute stress, like cold shock, might actually be quite good for us, albeit with the massive caveat that we are putting ourselves at risk sometimes in our waterways these days. But apparently it can transiently enhance the immune system. So a cold shower might be a slightly more safe way of doing it. However, that's not everybody's bag, not mine anyway. Or you could just chill. You don't need to cold shock yourself. Just chill. And there may be other benefits to exercising more and taking time to chill and getting in nature, because it's been shown that actually the external environment is really important for shaping our microbiome as well. While we're sitting in this room, we're exchanging microbes as we breathe and as I talk to you. Sorry, I am sharing my microbes with you at the moment. And that helps diversify your microbiome. And it may be no surprise to you that something else is really good at diversifying your microbiome, and it's your dogs and your pets. Dogs are particularly good because they're slobberers, aren't they? This is my dog, so I'm allowed to be critical of it. So they kind of rub themselves all over you. They give you their microbes, and again, that diversifies up your microbiome. So it's been shown that dogs, rural environments, to a lesser degree cats, if they go outside, can help shape your immune system and protect you from the risk of developing allergies. So if you do all of these things, and look at all of these things, chances are you'll fix the other risk that makes our immune system not work so well, and that's bad sleep. We don't sleep as well because we're stressed, perhaps because we're not exercising as much, perhaps because we're eating a bad diet. Poor sleep contributes to inflammation. So if we help our sleep, and that's often the hardest thing to fix, we might do better. So overall, we can all have a better immune system. The fix is actually quite easy. It's quite achievable. It's about looking at diversifying our diet, looking at being a little bit more mobile, as much as we can be within reason. Maybe switching off our phones, do not disturb at night. And hopefully that will help us be more relaxed and feel better and sleep better. And on that note, thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take any questions.
So we've got a roving mic here, so please put your hands up and I'll come and visit you with a microphone.
Has anybody got any questions? Are you all rushing out to buy some lentils now?
Now's your chance to get some free health tips from Sheena. Here we go, in the front row.
Cheers. Thank you so much. It was so interesting, Sheena. My question to you is, obviously, this is something that you can do actively yourself to help boost your immune system. But as science is progressing, there's sort of other external factors like air pollution that have effects on your immune system. Will that offset, an active diet, sort of external factors that we don't have any control over?
That's a really good question. So the sort of question about how the different contributions of all those different lifestyle factors, how they shape, we don't really know the answer to that yet. With pollution, that we do know that often your exposure to polluted sources, for example, in the cities, is often worse in cars than it is when you're on foot. So probably actually getting active will probably make a huge difference to your health. And also looking at the spaces, so obviously I've done work with you, that if you look at the spaces that you are in, you can also reduce your exposure to those pollutants. So if you can avoid walking on sort of heavy, busy roads and try and take quieter roads, the chances are the pollution will be less. And the more that we do that, the less we'll have the polluting cars on. You can also look at things you can do in your house to reduce your risks. So some of the biggest sources of pollution in our house are the things we cook with. So thinking about your extractor fan, when was the last time you changed the kind of vent thing on your extractor fan and make sure that's working properly? We know that wood burners are very bad, so looking at wood burners, how you use them, if you use them at all, and also think about cleaning chemicals because they can be damaging. So you can try and reduce your health in a lot of ways, but there's an awful lot we don't know about how all those things come together. And that's why I don't think you can have like expensive personalized nutrition and wellness companies because we don't all kind of know the nitty-gritty. Does that help?
Have you done any work on alcohol and immunity?
I've probably tested that out a few times. So that's a really good question. It's not something I've personally looked at, but yes, there has been research looking at how alcohol affects the immune system. And again, it's probably common sense. So excessive alcohol is toxins. So it's not particularly good for the microbiome in your gut. It will affect that. It will affect your liver. And your liver is where you produce some of your immune cell kind of effectors. So excessive alcohol is not necessarily very good for your immune system. Alcohol in moderation, I think there's less evidence that it will be bad for you, and that's what I'm hoping, because I do enjoy a glass of wine. So I'm not about to give up having the odd beer or the odd glass of wine, but definitely excessive alcohol is bad for you in all sorts of ways.
Hi. Do air fresheners have any influence on immunity and things? Because there's a big industry promoting air fresheners.
So air fresheners, do you mean like the kind of sprays and things? So actually, some of those might count as pollutants. So there's research happening at the university with some of my collaborators. They've got this incredible, this big tent. It's a big plastic tent, and we can put, so we're working with them, we can put like cells and things in there, and then we can put specific pollutants like an engine, we can fire it in there to expose our cells, or we can put different limones and chemicals in. And we're still waiting for some of the data to come out, but they could be quite toxic potentially. However, you tap on a really interesting idea, and this is this idea of the built microbiome. So I talked about the fact that we're exchanging microbes and the importance of the environment in shaping our microbiome. That was weird. So there is interest in trying to understand and learn more about the built microbiome, and perhaps what we can do is there's engineers that are thinking, could we start creating things that will influence the built microbiome to make us healthier, for example, in hospitals, in schools, in offices. It's really at its infancy, yeah, but I think that could be quite exciting. So it might not be an air freshener that we think of as today, but it might be something that's perhaps, I don't know, putting in some rural elements or some cat and dog elements. Who knows? I would. It's a good question. I probably wouldn't at the moment because I think it's so in its infancy that I wouldn't want to. Again, it's my discomfort about saying what things will definitely work and what things won't. I don't think we know enough yet, but long term, I think this could be really exciting. If I find out what's great about Oda Freddy, which is the name of my dog, well, he's quite smelly, then I will let you know.
Many thanks for your talk. Could you perhaps comment a little on the linkages between the microbiome and autoimmune diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease and Crohn's and things?
Yep, I can definitely do that. It's a great question. So I think that there's a few specific things that have been done. So changes in the microbiome have been linked with a lot of conditions. And often what we see in conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, which is when your body's reacting to your microbiome, is that we see that the microbiome becomes what we call dysbiotic. And that means that it becomes sort of out of balance. So it's, again, this idea of our immune system changes. So often it becomes less diverse. So we see sort of fewer types of microbes. And some of the studies, particularly in IBD, have shown that the balance of communities that we expect in the gut is changed. It's kind of switched. So we see more types of certain bacteria. What we don't know is if those bacteria are specifically driving the IBD, because what's happening in IBD is you've got a real combination of events, because you have genetic factors that affect the integrity of that gut barrier wall. You've got changes in the way that we recognize the bacteria, and we've got changes in the way that our immune cells then react to that, as well as changes in the microbiome. So trying to unpick the kind of chicken and egg scenario in there is quite complicated, but certainly some studies have suggested that some probiotics might help some people with inflammatory bowel disease, but they will still need other therapies as well. And there's a condition called necrotizing enterocolitis, which is something that newborns can get, premature newborns can get, which is some of the same features as inflammatory bowel disease. And here in a developing infant, what you've got is a really basic microbiome, because they're still acquiring it. They acquire it through the process of birth and then through the process of their diet as they get older. And one of the things that happens is that the babies don't naturally end up with a lot of bifidobacterium, which is a probiotic bacteria. And what they're now doing is they're supplementing babies that are premature with bifidobacterium, because it does seem to reduce the risk of them developing necrotizing enterocolitis. And that's probably because it seems to be linked with the development of regulatory pathways, T regulatory cells. So I don't know if I've completely answered your question.
Hiya. Thanks very much for the talk today. I was just curious to know, adding on to the previous question, are there any specific studies that might relate perfumes or the usage or the frequency of use of perfumes with our skin barrier or microbiome and eventually autoimmunity?
I don't think there's been studies that have looked at that in the context of the gut microbiome. There have been studies that have tried to understand what's happening with the skin microbiome and skin flares. And actually, your skin microbiome, it seems to be, because you've got lots of bugs that live on your skin as well, it seems to be a little bit more resilient to changes. So they did some studies where they looked at people using sanitizers and showed that the microbiome didn't knock down as much as we expected and actually bounced back quite quickly. Certainly some people are very sensitive to some perfumes and the chemicals that they're in. I'm one of them, actually. I'm massively allergic to perfume, so I have a massive T-cell reaction in my skin if I put certain perfumes on me. So it can definitely aggravate some inflammatory conditions, but we probably don't know enough about whether it causes them, but it's certainly an idea. Who knows? Good question.
So Sheena, we're running out of time. There's some amazing questions there. I've learned a lot. I'm sure we're all going to be trying to sing on our bicycles.
Yes,
And,
sing if you can.
There's a very good organic supermarket called the 8th Day Cafe down the road if you want to get some organic mung beans or something on your way home. Just to say a little plug, I think colleagues from your institute, the Lydia Becker Institute, are around today. We have something called the community fair going on. So in what we call colloquially the drum building, the round building, there's loads of science activity there today. In our engineering building, there's lots of science and engineering activities. And in our business school, there's lots of humanities and social science activities. So we have around 100 research groups. Sheena's from a research institute called the Lydia Becker Institute, but we have hundreds of people on campus today where you can learn about all sorts of different things about the research we do in the university. So I really encourage you to get along. Our Manchester Museum is open. Obviously, there's the
And you can also
activities here
print
as well.
your own immunology tote bag for free.
There you go. Lots of activities
as well as making some seed bombs for diversifying your microbiome in your own garden. That's happening just in the tent next door, so you can do that as your first stop.
Fantastic. Thank you. So can we give Sheena another round of applause, please? Thank you.